Alright, so today is somewhat of a little bit of a review. But it also looks different than what we're used to. So we're learning how to solve two-step equations, which we know how to do already. We've learned two-step equations. But these two-step equations have large fraction bars or grouping symbols in them. But don't let that confuse you. Because you kind of already know how to do this if you really think about it. Okay. Whenever you have something like this with a large fraction bar or a grouping symbol, you have to take care of that first before you do anything else, like move your variables and your constants to opposite sides of that equal sign. Okay. So let's look at this first example. We've got x plus 2 over 4 equals 3. We are going to solve this, and we're going to write down every step that we're doing. So we're going to fill in these blanks to the right. Does somebody tell me what that fraction bar actually means? It means division. So when we're solving other equations, if we want to get rid of something or move it to the other side, how do we do that? Add or subtract whenever we're dealing with addition or subtraction, right? But what if we're dealing with multiplication and division? You multiply or divide. But how do you decide whether you're multiplying or dividing or adding or subtracting? You do the opposite, right? So if you're trying to get something to the other side or get something to go away, you have to do the opposite operation. So if this fraction bar right here means that I'm dividing x plus 2 divided by 4, and I want to get rid of that fraction bar, Amon, what do I have to do? You have to multiply, but what am I multiplying it by? 4, because that's what I'm trying to get rid of, is that 4. Okay, so whatever I have to do to one side, remember you have to do it to the other side. So you have to multiply both sides by 4. So let's fill in step number 1. It says remove the large fraction bar by multiplying both sides by the denominator. Remember that your denominator is that number on the bottom of your fraction. So you have to multiply both sides by the denominator. So once we actually do that multiplication, that means that this 4 over here, what does it do? What happens with those 4s? They cancel out, which is what we want, because we were trying to get rid of that 4 on the bottom so that we don't have a fraction anymore. So they cancel out, and it leaves me with what on the left-hand side?
3 times 4.
On the left-hand side. X plus 2. Remember, my 4's only cancel out, so it leaves me with x plus 2. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so think about this as 4. If I put 4 as a fraction, it's 4 over 1, right? So this is 4 over 1. Remember, if you're multiplying fractions, you just multiply straight across, right? Or what else can you do before you multiply straight across? You can cancel. You can cross cancel, right? Remember that? So if 4 is across from 4, they're the same number, so that means it's 1. Same as if I had 2 over 4, I could go ahead and cross cancel, and that 2 could become a 1, and that 4 becomes a 2. Because you can take out a 2 from both those numbers. So that's why those cancel. Does that make sense? So I'm left with x plus 2 on the left-hand side, and then Roman, what's on the right-hand side? 3 times 4, which is what? 12. Don't forget to actually multiply 3 times 4. Don't just bring down that 3. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sorry.
You just always keep the top the same.
Yep. Because whenever you're multiplying by that bottom number, the only thing that's canceling out is that actual number, the top number and that bottom number. So it leaves you with x plus 2. So if I look at step number 2, it tells me to get the variables to one side. Have I already done that?
Yes.
In this case, I have. I didn't actually have to do anything. I only had one term that had a variable with it. So it's already on one side. Step number 3 is to undo the addition or subtraction. So in this case, what am I undoing? The addition. So how do I do that?
You subtract 2 from both sides.
Good. I've got to subtract 2 from both sides. So that cancels my 2's on the left, leaving me with x
10.
equals 10. So I went ahead and skipped step number 4 because there wasn't any multiplication or division that I had to undo. Okay. What is my final step? What did I actually have to do?
Find what x equals.
Find what x equals. So solve for the variable. So that's your final step, is just to simply solve for that variable. Remember, when I'm solving equations, I have to check my answer. Yes? Question? It's the final step of actually solving the problem. Checking is just making sure that we did everything right. Okay. But we do have to check it. And if y'all were going on Dolphin Island, you missed the shortcut checking. A lot of you are spending a little bit too much time checking your answer, which is important because you want to know if you're right. But I don't really care if you know how to write all those steps again. So we're going to shorten it up, and we're just plugging it in our calculator, okay? So if I'm plugging this in, that means I'm plugging in 10 for x. So I have 10 plus 2, which gives me 12. And then I have to divide that by 4, which gives me 3. Is 3 equal to 3?
Yes.
Yes, so my answer is correct. So this is the only thing that I want to see for checking from here on out. You can do it the old way, but just know that if it's taking you too much time, you're going to have to complete your test in one test period. Okay. So this should save you a lot of time. 3 equals 3. On another side note, if you are plugging in these your number for these type of equations, remember that x plus 2 is an actual number by itself. You have to find that number before you divide. So if I'm plugging all of this in as one step, so if I just say 10 plus 2 divided by 4, I don't get the same answer. I don't get the correct answer. Okay? Because my calculator doesn't know that I have to add 10 plus 2 first. So it's so important that you put parentheses around x plus 2. So if you're plugging it all in as one step, that means you've got to put an open parentheses, 10 plus 2, close your parentheses, and then divide by 4. And it gives you the correct answer of 3. Okay. So that's very important that you remember to put that the top expression in parentheses. Maddie? No, you came to math class, so you should have had it. Questions? So remember to put parentheses around that x plus 2 if you're plugging in your calculator all at once. Okay. All right, example number 2. We've got x minus 9 over negative 2 equals 7. So what is my very first step to get rid of that fraction bar? But first, before I get my variables on one side, how do I get rid of that fraction bar? Divide it or multiply. Remember, this means division right here. So you have to do the opposite of it, which is multiplication. So you have to multiply both sides by negative 2. Because you're trying to get that negative 2 to go away. You're trying to get that fraction to go away. So those negative 2's cancel each other, leaving you with x minus 9 equals what? Negative 14. Now what do you have to do?
Subtract. I mean, add 9 to both sides.
Add 9 to both sides. My variables were already on opposite sides, right? So let's skip down to step number 3, which is to undo that subtraction. So by doing that, that leaves me with x equals negative 5. So now if I want to check it, I'm trying to see if this left-hand side is going to equal 7. Okay. So remember, you've got to plug it in parentheses, so that means x is negative 5, so I have negative 5 minus 9, close parentheses, and then divided by negative 2. And that gives me 7. Okay. So 7 equals 7, and my answer is correct. How do you type it in? Right here. So you've got a parenthesis, negative 5.
Wait, how did you write it? Did you just write like the answer?
Right there? Yeah, I wrote just 7 equals 7. Check. So Jacory, you're right. You're punching in your parentheses. It's right here. Parentheses, negative 5 minus 9, and then close that parenthesis. You got, and then divide by negative 2. Yes, sir.
I don't know how, but I got 23.
Okay. Did you not put your parentheses?
Yeah.
Did you forget a negative?
Oh.
You might have forgot a negative. Or you added 14 and 9, didn't you? Yeah. Negative 14 plus 9. Remember, those are different signs, so you actually subtract them. Questions on number 2? Okay, are you putting a subtraction sign instead of a negative sign? Remember that this is your negative. X is negative 5. Negative 5. Minus 9. Divided by negative 2. Alright, example number 3. What is my very first step? Multiply what?
Negative 6 by both sides.
Multiply both sides by negative 6. So when I do that, what do I get on the left-hand side? Both of these cross out, leaving me with... So I have C plus 50 equals 42, right?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
42?
Positive 42, because you're multiplying two negatives, which gives you a positive. Okay. Good. Then I need to subtract 50 from both sides. So C is equal to 42 minus 50.
It's
Negative
negative 8.
8. Remember, you're actually subtracting those two. Remember, negative 7 times negative 6. A negative times a negative always gives you a positive. A negative times a positive gives you a negative. But two negatives multiplied by themselves always going to give you a positive. Alright, so if I'm checking it, that means I have negative 8 plus 50, which gives me 42. Divide that by negative 6, which gives me negative 7. Is that what the right-hand side is? It is. So that means it's correct. Negative 7 equals negative 7. Are we good? Yes? Okay. Let's look at example number 4. It's a little bit different. Number 4, what's different about it?
It's all over to us.
It has a 7 times G, right? All the other ones just had a variable by itself. Here we have a number in front of our variable. So that means it's just going to have one extra step to it. But we're still just going to follow the normal steps of solving an equation. Okay. So if I have a large fraction bar, my first step is to get rid of that large fraction bar. So how do I do that?
Multiplication.
Multiply both sides by 2, that bottom number. Okay. And then when I do that, that leaves me with just 7G plus 3 equals, what's 12 times 2?
Oh, 24. I thought
24.
Now you have.
I need to subtract first before I divide. So subtract 3 from both sides. Because remember, I have to get that variable by itself. So variables on one side and constants on one side. So that leaves me with 7G equals, what's 24 minus 3? 21.
21.
Here's where I have an extra step. So what do I do?
Divide.
By 7. And G is equal to 3. So this just has one more step. We have to undo that multiplication and division too. Good.
You know, I'm smart, so I know that.
That's right. So if I check it, that means I have 7 times 3. Right? Yeah, 7 times 3 plus 3 divided by 2, which gives me 12. 12 is equal to 12. So it checks out. Questions? We good? Alright, I'm going to pass out a worksheet. We're going to do 2 of the problems on the worksheet together. You can do the ones on the back for extra practice if you want to.
Oh, nope.
But we're going to do the ones on this worksheet instead. Alright guys, let's look at number 2 on this worksheet. We're going to do number 2 and number 12. And then the rest you can do on your own, okay? On the front side, sorry. So the one that says 6.3 more 2-step problems. So this is on the front page. Your holes should be on the left. We're going to do number 2. Okay. Number 2 on the front. It's 13 plus h divided by 2 equals 12. So what do I have to do first? Multiply both sides by 2. So what do I get on the left-hand side of that equation?
Wait.
After I multiply by 2, what am I left with?
You cross it out.
13 plus h equals 24. 12 times 2 gives me 24. So now I've got 13 plus h, so that variable's on the right side of that expression. Right, I've got to subtract 13 from both sides. This is still a positive 13, so you still have to do the opposite of it, which is negative, or subtract 13.
Negative 11.
So h is equal to negative 11?
Yep.
Yep, it's a positive 11. How'd you get negative, Roman?
I don't know what you told me to do. Didn't wait around, you know what I did.
24 minus 13. 24 is larger than 13, so that's just regular subtraction.
Did it that way, then you told me to do it the other way, but I did it the other way.
24 minus 13 gives you 11. Alright, so if I want to check it, remember that means I've got 13 plus 11, which gives me 24. And then divide that by 2, which gives me 12. So that means 12 is equal to 12. And my answer is correct. Remember, I want to see this 12 equals 12 check. So that's what you're doing to check your answer. So that's what I want to see.
And then when we get them, they need to do with each other as the rest are homework.
Classwork. Yeah, classwork homework. Questions on number 2. All right, let's skip down and do number 12 real quick. Yes. No, we're going to do the back of it tomorrow. Okay.
Wait, you want me to start first?
All right, so number 12, I've got 3m plus 6 over 4 equals 33. So remember, the first thing that I'm doing is trying to get rid of that fraction by multiplying. Number 12. So that means I'm multiplying both sides by 4, which leaves me with 3m plus 6. Does everybody agree? Equals 132. And then what do I do?
Subtract 6 from both sides.
Good.
126.
126. So I have 3m equals 126.
And then you gotta,
Divide both sides by 3, and m is equal to what?
42.
Do we agree? Quit singing. So m equals 42. But now remember, you got to check it, because I'm trying to see if this left-hand side is equal to 33. So that means I've got 3 times 42, which gives me 126. Add 6 to that, and I get 132. And then divide 132 by 4, and you get 33. So they check off. Okay. Any questions? All right, I want you to work on the rest of these problems in class. If whatever you don't finish in class, of course it is homework.
No.